This video is to help those who are interested in playing warriors in PvP. It is a general breakdown of options which consists of Fury, Arms, and Pro and Glad. Topics we'll cover consist of what each spec provides, a basic outlook of DPS in general, and even where warriors place in arena comps. To begin, let's look at the common DPS specs, Fury and Arms. Although different playstyles, they provide similar tools when it comes to PvP. Let's have a look at the basic pros and cons. High burst, which is very important for the most part. It can be the result of getting killing blows, forcing defensives, and applying a lot of pressure on healers. These two specs are designated DPS specs. In other words, that's their job. This means that they're given the tools to deal high amount of damage. For example, Fury, when in rage, can add up to 50% increased damage overall. They dish out heavy damage, which is why they are so popular. Utility, which consists but not limited to a healing debuff, rally and cry, even shatter and throw. Utilities like these can be very helpful for you and your teammates. Now let's go ahead and cover some cons. They do have weak survivability, meaning you do die quickly without defensives or a support class to help you heal through the damage, which is one trade-off to having very high damage output. RNG is a very common thing with these classes as well, especially for Fury. Your damage can be extremely high or it can be very low. Sometimes you do have to rely on RNG luck so that you can deal the most amount of heavy strong burst damage. Prot is a tank spec but still used in PvP. Even though there is a good amount of pros, sometimes that isn't enough to make it a favorite. Stronger survivability, you do get the damage reduction, which can be very helpful, and you get some extra defenses to help against certain classes. All these combined can help you live longer than expected when solo or against high damage classes. As for utility, the main focus here is the dispel that you can get with Prot. Always nice to have dispel for certain healing classes like druids and priests. Deep wound, bleeds are good for that added pressure and help with stealth classes. To my surprise, the bleed does a good amount of damage. Build rage quickly. From what I noticed, you build rage at a fast pace and hardly run out. Since most of your abilities build rage, you rarely see your bar low unless you spam shield barrier or other abilities that require a lot of rage like heroic strike. And now for cons. The damage is probably the number one concern, where it is not horrible, but it is still considered medium to low damage outside of cooldowns like avatar or DPS trinkets. It lacks the high burst like Fury and Arms would, but it is still consistent, which I'll explain later on. Gladiator is a new spec that combines tank damage abilities into a more DPS friendly play style. Some things to look forward to with Glad is the mobility. It almost gives you 4 charges to stay on your opponents. By using shield charge you can gain extra mobility to close gaps, and it also gives you extra damage increase for some of your abilities. Bleeds, just like Prot, you get those strong bleeds, and not to mention just like Prot as well, Glad also gives you a lot of rage to play around with, but sometimes it is usually spent on shield barrier or heroic strikes. And now a random list of cons. No anger management. Lack of utility means no dispel, healing debuffs, rally and cry, or even shatter and throw. You don't have high burst outside avatar and other cooldowns, unlike Fury and Arms. This DPS spec does not have recklessness for that high amount of burst. The damage is medium, even though you do get a 5% damage bonus, although still slightly higher than Prot but just not as strong as Fury or Arms. Mediocre survivability. This is slightly better than Fury and Arms, but just still weaker than Prot, so without a healer you will still go down quickly after all your defenses are gone. This is a basic DPS chart to kind of explain a little bit more when it comes to the damage output of all specs. Starting with Fury and Arms specs, you will see that they have very high burst when it comes to using cooldowns, but the damage has a chance to fall down into a dead zone when you have no rage or no RNG luck. The damage can be a bit low and underwhelming. Prot has a decent start and stays consistent as cooldowns come around. You can see that the damage does go up slightly, but for the most part it just hangs around an average level. Basically this means that it isn't bad damage, just not enough to one-shot or intimidate other classes, yet not low enough that you aren't doing any damage. You can still kill classes with Prot, it just takes a little bit longer. Glad has a good start and does a bit more damage than Prot, higher damage when it comes to cooldowns, yet still manages to be consistent and average. One good thing about Glad is that there is no low dead zone time, but also there is no extremely strong high burst capabilities. At times you can deal a good amount of damage, but don't expect to kill someone in one global. Again, the longer the fight goes on, the more chances you have of winning, if you aren't dead by then. And just remember that this is all theoretical and just an example of how the damage can look. A quick summary would be Fury and Arms do provide very high burst peaks, but at the risk of having low damage downtime. Whereas Prot and Glad may not have the highest burst that's deadly, they also don't have any downtime. They deal a good amount of damage, just not enough to really make them appealing for most people in competitive PvP. Now let's go ahead and look at warrior comp choices. This is to let you know that all specs will have a chance to be viable in arenas, but there will definitely be preferred preferred specs. Notice how when it comes to Fury and Arms, they are more versatile and can go with different comps, which is why they are the most popular. As Prot, you'll have less people looking to team up with you and even less as Glad, though you can still use them in arenas. They just require a bit more work and patience compared to Fury and Arms. So there you have it. I gave just a brief overview of the warrior class in PvP. Play whatever spec you feel is comfortable and most fun. If you're a casual player, just enjoy doing battlegrounds or arenas with friends to cap. Play whatever spec you have most fun with. All specs can be viable to an extent, but with the only difference is that Prot and Glad will most likely take more work than the other two. Hope this helps and thanks for watching.